The night sky over the Strait of Hormuz suddenly turned into a raging inferno as Iranian missile batteries and drone swarms unleashed a ferocious, coordinated strike directly against the United States carrier strike group patrolling those critical waters. American sailors on the decks of their billion-dollar warships heard the urgent alarms blaring across every compartment, while radar screens filled with hundreds of incoming threats racing in from the Iranian coastline. This was no random skirmish. Behind the fiery propaganda of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps lies a decaying, rusted reality that Tehran can no longer hide. While Iranian state media broadcasts images of missile launches, the truth is floating aimlessly in the Persian Gulf. Dozens of decommissioned, rotting tankers, deemed scrap metal years ago, are now being used as desperate, makeshift storage for oil that the world refuses to buy. The U.S. Navy has just seized the 5th Iranian-linked vessel in a month, effectively slamming the final door on the regime's economy. There is no plan C, there is no escape. And as we speak, the 22-day countdown to a total industrial collapse has already begun. But how did a regional power with the world's largest oil reserves end up pumping crude into sinking scrap ships? The answer lies in a fatal miscalculation. Tehran thought their drone swarms and missiles would be enough to break the American blockade. They were wrong. On that fateful night, the sky over Hormuz did indeed turn into an inferno. But it wasn't a show of strength, it was a scream of desperation. The opening Iranian barrage involved more than 250 Shahed-style loitering drones and reconnaissance unmanned systems launched in carefully timed waves from multiple coastal sites. These were followed within minutes by volleys of precision anti-ship ballistic missiles fired from mobile launchers that had stayed hidden until the last moment. United States Navy crews responded with everything in their arsenal. SM-6 and SM-2 interceptors climbed into the night sky in bright streaks, while evolved Sea Sparrow missiles and close-in weapon systems filled the air with tracers and explosions. Yet the volume of threats proved overwhelming. Multiple Iranian missiles and drones broke through the defensive layers. One Arleigh Burke-class destroyer took a direct impact amidships from a heavy anti-ship ballistic missile. The warhead detonated inside the hull, triggering massive secondary blasts that ripped through engineering spaces and sent flames shooting from every opening. 18 American sailors were killed in the initial explosion and fire. Another 30 were wounded as damage control parties fought through choking smoke to contain the blaze. The ship listed badly and had to be taken under tow towards safer waters, while its combat systems went offline. A second destroyer suffered a crippling strike to its stern and radar mast. The missile destroyed the helicopter hangar, disabled key sensor arrays, and left the vessel with reduced fighting power for days. Iranian commanders watched the battle damage assessments come in through drone feeds and celebrated the proof that their sea denial strategy could bloody a superpower fleet inside the confined geography of the Strait. American pilots launched from the carrier deck in F-35 Lightning IIs and F/A-18 Super Hornets to hunt the drone swarms and provide overhead protection. Iranian surface-to-air systems claimed at least one American aircraft during the intense running battle that followed. The engagement stretched for hours, with both sides trading fire until the first light of dawn. Iranian fastboats pressed their attacks even as the American carrier executed high-speed evasive turns and kept its layered defenses active. The psychological shock inside the Pentagon was immediate. Senior officers realized they faced an adversary willing to absorb heavy losses to land punishing blows on expensive American platforms and trained crews. In the days after that first major clash, the United States Navy moved additional destroyers, cruisers, and attack submarines into the Strait and the approaches in the Gulf of Oman. Their mission was clear: stop every vessel suspected of carrying Iranian crude and enforce a physical cordon that no sanctions package had ever achieved. Iranian forces did not back down. They launched follow-up strikes aimed at the logistics ships and patrol vessels, trying to tighten the noose. Coastal missile batteries fired salvos at a United States destroyer that had closed in to board a suspected smuggler. 3 anti-ship missiles streaked toward the target. One struck the helicopter deck, starting a fierce fire that injured 7 sailors and forced the warship to withdraw at reduced speed for emergency repairs. The entire American task group pulled back several miles, giving Iranian tankers brief windows to attempt runs with their automatic identification systems switched off. Those daring moves carried extreme risk. United States Marines fast-roped from helicopters onto at least one Comoros-flagged vessel in the Gulf of Oman during a recent interdiction. The boarding party searched the ship thoroughly, but found no clear evidence of a recent Iranian port call and released it. The message was unmistakable. Every vessel moving near Iranian waters now operates under constant American surveillance from overhead aircraft and satellites. Even with these risks, Iranian naval units continued asymmetric attacks. Small boats and coastal batteries kept American blockading ships at a respectful distance, proving that the Strait favors the side that can mass firepower from the shore. Each successful hit on a United States warship boosted morale inside Iran and reminded the Revolutionary Guard that their investment in missiles and drones had delivered real results against a far larger opponent. The economic pressure on Tehran nevertheless grew severe. Daily oil exports crashed from 1,850,000 barrels to 567,000 barrels within 2 weeks of the tightened blockade. Storage tanks filled at an alarming rate. Analysts tracking the situation warned that Iran had only 12 to 22 days of unused capacity left before it would have to shut in another 1,500,000 barrels of daily production. At Chabahar, the one major export terminal outside the Strait, more than 20 tankers and cargo vessels sat jammed together where normally only 5 would be moored. Crews waited in frustration while the United States Navy maintained its presence in the Gulf of Oman and halted any ship with even the slightest Iranian connection. The financial bleeding reached $13 billion every month. Insurance companies canceled every policy covering Hormuz transits. Major tanker owners removed Iranian routes from their schedules. Traditional Asian buyers walked away because the risk of losing a ship to American boarding parties had become too real. Tehran was forced to pump crude into rusting, decommissioned vessels never designed for long-term storage, a desperate measure that highlighted how quickly the situation had deteriorated. Yet Iranian leaders framed every naval success against the United States fleet as evidence that their resistance was working and that the American blockade was a sign of weakness rather than strength. Inside the country, the strain showed everywhere. The Supreme National Security Council met in emergency session and produced a stark assessment that leaked almost immediately. The document concluded that fresh anti-regime protests could break out within days because economic pain was already severe. It stated that Iran could withstand the blockade for at most 6 to 8 weeks before serious cracks appeared. It also projected that nearly 2 million private sector jobs could disappear by the end of spring. Security officials summarized their findings in one blunt line: unrest is inevitable. Only the timing remains uncertain. President Masoud Pezeshkian addressed the nation on state television and told citizens to cut electricity use dramatically, suggesting they turn on only 2 lamps in their homes instead of 10. Government offices shifted to half-day schedules. Heating in the Tehran metro was reduced. In Isfahan and Tabriz, streetlights were cut by half. The Iranian rial fell to 1,800,000 against the dollar in just 2 months. Annual inflation passed 40%. Lines for bread, meat, and milk grew longer, while imported medicine prices jumped nearly 60%. The Revolutionary Guard continued to highlight the naval strikes against American warships as proof that Iran could still defend its interests and punish aggressors even while the broader economy suffered. Funding that once supported proxy networks in Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq slowed to a trickle, leaving those groups short of cash and equipment. Yet the regime used images of damaged United States destroyers and successful missile launches to rally domestic support and portray the fight as a defense of national sovereignty against foreign bullying. The United Arab Emirates' decision to leave OPEC and dramatically increase flows through the Habshan-Fujairah pipeline added another layer of anger inside Tehran. That 380-kilometer line now carries nearly 1,900,000 barrels per day straight to the Gulf of Oman without ever entering the Strait of Hormuz. Since March, the pipeline exports have surged 57%. By exiting OPEC, the UAE can add another 1 million barrels daily to global markets without quota limits. Iranian officials viewed the move as a direct betrayal by a neighbor profiting from their distress and coordinating with American pressure. The decision weakened OPEC's share of world supply from 30% to 26% and threatened to drive oil prices lower at the exact moment Iran needed higher prices to offset its reduced export volumes. As storage capacity nears its limit and production cuts become unavoidable, the regime faces a narrowing set of options. One path leads to accepting a broad agreement that places the nuclear program on the table in return for lifting the blockade, though hardliners inside the Revolutionary Guard would denounce any such deal as surrender. Another path means continuing the fight with more sea attacks and attempts to slip tankers through the cordon, risking the internal unrest the Security Council already fears. The third path involves even sharper escalation if the United States decides to strike Iranian nuclear facilities and Revolutionary Guard bases directly. Throughout every phase of this crisis, Iranian forces have shown they can still reach out and damage American naval assets in the confined waters of the Strait and its approaches. Each missile that finds its mark and each drone that penetrates the screen reminds Washington that power projection in contested littorals carries real costs in ships and lives. The United States has responded with a physical blockade that sanctions alone could never achieve. Yet Iranian commanders continue to look for new angles to keep the pressure on blockading ships and maintain the initiative at sea. The hatred between the two sides has deepened with every explosion and every economic hardship, turning a struggle over oil routes into a broader contest of wills that shows no sign of quick resolution. What path do you see unfolding next? Will continued Iranian sea attacks force the United States to ease its blockade, or will the economic vice eventually bring Tehran to the table? Tell us your analysis in the comments right now. Hit like if this real-time breakdown of the naval war and its consequences matters to you, and subscribe so you never miss the next development in this fast-moving confrontation that could reshape energy flows and regional power for years to come. The situation remains fluid, the stakes keep rising, and every new strike or interception could tip the balance in ways no one fully expects.